Live on DAZN Worldwide, April 26th, Eubank Jr. versus Benn. 30 years of rivalry and hatred.
I do hate him.
All comes down to this. The next generation, a new destroyer. For family, history, legacy. Eubank Jr. versus Benn, April 26th. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
All right, so we had the final press conference for Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn, and this was so badly needed for a variety of reasons, right? One, I was sold on this fight after the egg incident. I mean, that really did. I think that put a lot of butts in seats for a lot of people with regards to this fight. And it's a shame in a way that it happened at the very start, at the very kickoff. Because what it essentially meant is that we got a little bit less PR. We got the second press conference and then they were on Piers Morgan's show. And that was really it. We didn't get the face-to-face, which we were meant to get because obviously there was a lot of tension, shall we say, after the egg incident. And since then, it's really kind of been just, people talking about this fight as opposed to like hearing really from the fighters, stuff like that. And then this week, they have treated this week, obviously, as they would, a Riyadh show, a Saudi show, even though it's Ring Magazine, it's still Turkey al-Sheikh, it's still the Saudis. So they've done the grand arrival, the public workout and stuff like that, but we haven't seen any interaction with the fighters. They've been separated very much so by security all week. So, you see a couple of little pictures of them going staring at one another, at weigh-ins at workouts and stuff like that. But, it's not like they're like that. It's miles apart, security everywhere. So we've seen very limited fighter interaction this week. And that's why this was badly needed. And as it's weird, right? I think Conor Benn showed me something different because Conor Benn in the first two press conferences, he did bite a little bit in this fight, but in comparison to the first two, night and day. Because Conor Benn, every little bit, Chris Eubank Jr. was constantly giving Conor Benn a rope to hang himself with. And he was getting so worked up. He was getting so, I want to say emotional to an extent, because Conor Benn, and he even admitted it himself, he's like, I'm an emotional fighter, as if we couldn't tell. You're just like your dad. But he kept biting on everything Eubank Jr. gave him. Eubank Jr. was trying to rile him. He was doing that. He did rile him a little bit in this press conference, but Conor Benn was definitely a lot more grounded. Nigel, on the other hand, he started going in on this, mad big sparring story, and, Denzel Bentley, a super middleweight, should be fighting at light heavyweight. He's British middleweight champion. Just chucking that out there, Nigel. Sorry, I love you, but just chucking that out there. And talking, it was a bit on the... I did cringe a little bit when Nigel was telling the story about Conor Benn and sparring for the run-up to this fight. It was a little bit cringe, I ain't gonna lie. In terms of what the promoters had to say, Ben Shalom spoke, as he always does. Don't remember a word he said, as not many people do. Need I say more about Ben Shalom? Eddie Hearn. We knew it was going to happen. And I think Eddie's solution was interesting, to say the least. As soon as Eddie Hearn started speaking, Chris Eubank Jr., he wasn't letting Eddie Hearn get a word in. Try as hard Eddie Hearn did, he realised the jig was up on that one. I love the way Eddie Hearn, who was such a good talker, is like, right, I'm not getting a word in, let's bring in Frank Smith. All right, the 911's not working, the Porsche isn't starting, let's bring in the Micra. Well, that's going to make it better, isn't it? So the same thing happened. And Frank Smith admitted, he's like, I'm not the speaker. So it kind of went and it kind of faded pretty damn quick. So Chris Eubank Jr., he won that round. With regards to promoters and things like that. And then it got to, you're talking about the way Jamie Ward, who was doing the interviews, and, seeing the, obviously I'm not long finished recording that A&G, man. And, seeing, because obviously I know why A isn't doing this show, and I'm not going to go into details, but Jamie Ward did a great job presenting, he really did. And I think he's a great interviewer. He's a very good presenter, but Ade is just, he is just that good. He really is. So it was weird seeing Ade not involved in this, someone who's, knows him and knows how much this means to him and watching the zone. The outpouring from people has been amazing, and he even was saying it to me. So that's one good thing. But Jamie Ward did a good job presenting. He spoke about the weight cut, and Chris Eubank Jr. started talking about, it's painful, it's not easy. And then he brought up, obviously, his younger brother, Sebastian. who drowned, I believe it was. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that was what it was. He drowned 4 years ago now in Dubai, and he obviously left a son behind, Raheem. And full disclosure, I've no siblings, so I don't know what it's like to lose. I'll never know what it's like to lose a sibling. But it must, especially considering he was very close with Sebastian. Going through that, and he obviously brought up his dad. Going through that, a wake up must feel like child's play in comparison to what he went through, especially during those months with Sebastian and with his father, respectively. So and then Conor Benn, obviously, of course, Conor Benn, whenever Eubank was talking, he was people. Well, you mentioned that, he's not the brightest, but even he knows not to speak out of place in that one. You don't do that. So Eubank Junior really did, and to be fair, like Eubank, to be fair, honestly, I didn't think he looked that bad. When you can look at someone in the face. And a great example, right? I remember I went to the Anthony Yard Art of Baturbia press conference a couple of years ago. That was in the Wembley Arena, the OVO, up there in Wembley, and very close to both fighters. And Anthony Yard sitting there drinking water, and I mean you could literally see the cheekbones on Baturbiev, and he didn't touch the water at all during that press conference. That was on a Thursday. The weigh-in was on the Friday, and Yard was sipping away. And Baturbiev was literally, you could see the cheekbone just popping out. And with Eubank, he was drinking water. He seemed fine. He didn't look that bad. You can tell in the face if someone is, even if it's just the third, you can tell. And yeah, I'm sure he's not feeling $1 million, but he didn't look that bad, to be honest with you. So let's see how this weight cut goes. In terms of the face-to-face, there was no eggs. Well, I did wait to see. I was like, would he do it again? There was no eggs this time. And yeah, it was, they've had 3 press conferences. No was ever going to top the first one. Second one was actually not too bad. This one was probably the weakest, but it was needed. They let the fighters get as close as they could. It was like Fury Usyk all over again, and both guys, they just said, right, you're not breaking the stare, fair enough, we'll just intervene. Because with Fury Usyk, that went on for an insane amount of time, 10 minutes nearly. I think security were like, all right, we're working on a shift here, let's get this done. So that was that. In terms of, I said that, well, obviously you'll see it tomorrow, that I'm very interested for this fight. And I think it just needed something like this, just to see the fighters together up close, and it's like, right, it's happening. That's what it needed. And yeah, I am truly looking forward to this fight. We will be doing a live watch along on Saturday. I will give my 2 cents on the way in tomorrow. Of course I will. We'll probably even do a Friday live, to be honest with you, just to get in the mood and just go from there. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, people, I really do hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe as always if you haven't already. And until next time, peace.